Hello, everyone. Hello. Sorry that it took me a few minutes. My internet went out like right before I was trying to get started, and I was running a little late anyway. And then I realized that I needed to change something in OBS, and it was not obeying me. So I finally dealt with that. So we're good now, I think. You can hear me and see me, right? Um, oh, Blue, you said Meat Bun thinks she's so funny. Make sure you read her message on the back of the front cover. I will do that. Should I do that before I even start the stream? Oh, thank you, Henry. And it's good to see you all here. Let me get through the, I guess, official stuff before we get started. My name is Ezra, also known as eSoup, and as you might know or be able to see, that we're starting a new series today, and it's Case File Compendium. We're back to Meat Bun again, um, and I feel unprepared. There is a link to trigger warnings in the description. I advise you look at that. I've heard that there are other trigger warnings that are like not included in that list. I believe that there's some self-harm in the story at some point. So add that to the trigger warning list mentally in your head if you look at the one that's in the description. Unfortunately, I tried to find like a better, more comprehensive list and I kind of had trouble. I might try to put something together myself, but for now, this is what I had to kind of point people to. And if in case you're new here, I don't know if anyone new is here, but it's a new book. So possibly I read things for the first time on this channel. So this is me reading out loud and also a reaction, and I'll stop and make comments and talk to people and all that good stuff. I would really appreciate if you give the stream a like. And before we start, let me see. We're going to look at the cover, and then we're going to look at that little inner message from Meat Bun. But here is this cover. I think it conveys the tone of kind of how I'm imagining this is very well. So there's that. Oh, and I have a different bookmark that I'm going to be using for this series than the one that I've been, and it's very, very silly. It came with this like Kindle cover thing that I got. I don't know if you can actually read that with the glare. But that is the vibe that I think we're going for with this book. So that's the bookmark that I'm using. The message from where is the interior message from Meat Bun? 7 C's. Where are you? Actually, is it in the Blue, the little message from Meat Bun that you mentioned? Is it in like the front cover? Just immediately the front cover. Oh, it's cute. She said, "Thank you for reading. May these memories stay with you forever." And there's like a little cat. Let me see if I can show you. Little cat illustration. In a heart. That is very cute. Thank you, Blue, for pointing that out. Oh, Lawn Jade, you said you need that bookmark. Yeah. Blue, it sounds like a threat. It does. It does, actually, yeah. Some memories you maybe would rather not hold on to from Meat Bun. Yeah, that is... that's a good point. So... I guess I'm going to start. Henry, are you the only one who knows spoilers for this? I know a couple of things that I don't really consider a spoiler, but they're just like kind of plot things. But I really like, I know a few random things, but honestly, I feel like I'm going in pretty blind because I really don't know a lot. Um, so this is going to be very interesting. You know the plot up to volume 4, Henry. Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're the rereader this time in a way. Like, I know that you haven't actually. Yeah, so you haven't actually read it, but you just, like, know a whole bunch of things that happen. Also, I'll let it be known that the little graphics at the beginning of each chapter title, and this is like it, okay, so it's like it on the spine of the book, there's like a drop of blood. I'm assuming that's a drop of blood, and it's got that for the chapter titles as well. So it gives us some vibes. So I'm gonna get started. We're on whatever the heck page this is, obviously the first actual chapter. Chapter 1, Opening Shot. Click. The darkness illuminated. The TV screen flickered, and an image began to appear. The faculty dorm was located in the building crammed into the furthermost corner of the centuries-old university campus. Placed out of the way, it was where the school mostly sent their young and sprightly teachers. The exterior was gorgeous, all red brick and white steps, with delicate ivy vines encircling the old Western-style building. No passerby would be able to resist taking a lingering gaze, but only those lucky enough to become a teacher and enter it would realize that, under its beautiful facade, this building had undergone many rounds of repairs. The interior walls were mottled and layered, like an aged face caked with countless layers of makeup. The dorm was so old that it didn't even have digital televisions. The ones here were cable TVs that could only be described as antiques. The Yangtze Plain is experiencing several torrential rainstorms in succession. A young man walked past the corridor as the sound of the TV program filtered through the cracked glass window of the receptionist's office. Usually, the old lady on shift would stop him and shout, "Hey, little student, don't you know? This is a faculty residence for teachers. You're a student. You can't keep coming here." But today, the receptionist didn't scold him. Perhaps it was because she was staring off into space, or that her eyesight was failing in her later years, but she didn't notice him pass by in the dark night. He walked directly up to the 3rd floor and knocked on a familiar iron door. It opened with a creak. The woman inside poked her head out. "It's you?" "Xie Lao Shi," the young man said softly. It was quite late, and he was an unexpected guest, but the woman was his teacher, as well as the person closest to him in the entire school. After a moment of surprise, she welcomed him inside. She brewed a cup of tea and added some sliced ginger. It was raining outside, and she could feel that the youth was soaked and cold. Hot ginger tea could drive out the chill. Xie Laoshi placed the steaming cup down on the tea table before her student, who was standing uncomfortably in front of the sofa. "When did you get back?" "Just today." "Please sit down," Xie Laoshi said. Only then did he sit, his hands curled over his knees. He was stiff and reserved, and didn't touch the tea. "Why didn't you let me know that you were coming back? Are there even buses this late?" How did things go with your family?" The youth was quiet for a while, then lowered his head to pick at the rip in his jeans. "My mom still wants me to drop out." Xie Laoshi fell silent. He was already a university student. If he chose to drop out, the school didn't have much say in the matter. Even so, she had spoken with his mother and promised to lower the tuition fees due to their financial difficulty, in hopes that his mother would allow her son to finish his studies at the university he had worked so hard to get into. Also, did I miss, Blue, did you have to go? Oh, I probably missed Blue. But if not, then bye blue. um Also, my first thought is, does the teacher have influence in being able to lower the tuition fees? Because that's pretty incredible. Uh, but his mother had shrilly refused. What studies? Studying Chinese? Who doesn't know how to speak Chinese? You're all just pulling a scam. Xie Laoshe had patiently and gently tried to explain. Your son is very bright. Look, he's already in his second year. Wouldn't it be a huge waste to give up halfway? Plus, once he graduates, it'll be easier for him to find a job. He told me he wants to be a teacher. With his grades, he'd have no trouble getting employed as one. This is your son's dream, and teaching is a stable job. He could never become a teacher. It's not like you haven't seen his face. The mother's words were like a dull blade, cleaving right down the middle of an invisible current. Xie Laoshe was furious, but she didn't know how to respond. I want him to come back to work right now. Our family is broke. He needs to stop wasting time. With that face, what can he do even if he studies? What school would want this kind of teacher? So what was his face like? She peered at her student, his face dimly illuminated by the weak incandescent lamp in her room. Xie Laoshe had already grown used to his features, but everyone who saw him for the first time would gasp. Due to some unknown disease, half of his face, from forehead to neck, was covered in purple blotches, as if concealing rotting flesh. It was a horrifying sight, undisguised in its abnormality. Freak. Stay away from him. It might be contagious. Hey, half and half. Having grown up with this face of his, mockery and ridicule followed him like a shadow. Because he had a disease, and moreover, because he didn't have the sense to cover up his ailment, his ugliness, he was shunned wherever he went. No matter how hard he studied, no matter how gently he interacted with others, he was like an evil dragon flying through a clear sky, conspicuous and frightening. He could never receive any equal treatment. People like Xie Laoshe, who could see that the unblemished half of his face was very lovable and gentle, were a rarity. He would always gently and numbly bear everyone's mockery. Sometimes, he too would laugh along, as if he had actually done something wrong. But what exactly had he done wrong? I'm just, pausing there because that's the first couple of lines that I immediately was like, oh yeah, we're reading Meat Bun. He would always gently and numbly bear everyone's mockery. Because I feel so out of my depth with, like, Meat Bun, but it's a modern setting. But that just brought me back to, like, that is her. Xie Laoshe noticed it all. When studying, he'd always be the most focused. He'd dutifully do his part and silently take on the most work in group projects. When people bullied him, he would just endure it without getting angered or saying much. It's fine, Laoshe. I'm already very happy that you chat with me. Back in my village, everyone would cross the street as soon as they saw me coming. There's never been anyone like you who would listen to me so attentively. The other students are very nice too. At least no one's thrown bricks at me. His words were calm, but his head was forever bowed, his shoulders hunched. Years of humiliation had caused his spine to bend, deforming from the pressure. Hi, Cookie. Oh, you didn't know we were reading Being on Ben. Oh my god. I'm glad to welcome you. Later, she said to him, if you'd like, you can always come to me for private tutoring after the evening self-study session. If there's anything you don't understand or you need my help with, just let me know. He smiled in deep embarrassment, the blush of shame appearing on the unblemished half of his face. In the 2 years she'd known him, she'd grown used to opening her dorm door after he had knocked to see him standing there with his stooped posture. He would be carrying the papers, prose, and even poetry that he wrote, having come to ask her for pointers. These days, many people liked to curse, but very few liked to write poetry. But he persisted, even as other students mocked him, calling him an ugly freak who wrote ugly things. So rancid, even more rancid than your rotten grape face. He would smile a little and just keep writing. Now he didn't even have the right to do that anymore. As these thoughts filled Xie Laoshe's mind, she felt a pang of sorrow and gazed with pity at the boy in front of her. Laoshe, this time I came to say goodbye, he said. I'll be leaving tomorrow. You're going back home? More or less. He paused. Laoshe, if my disease weren't on my face, if it were somewhere people couldn't see, people would be a little nicer to me. How nice would that be? The rims of Xie Laoshe's eyes reddened. She'd already done everything she could, but she wasn't his kin. She didn't have the final say, nor could she save him. His family situation was worsening by the day, and his mother regretted letting her child leave home to study, especially since she had a healthy second son who was still in junior high school. If they called the sick child back home, they could let the healthy one take his place. Xie Laoshe didn't blame his mother. Having to weigh the pros and cons of the family situation, she was being quite fair. The essay that you left with me, the one you wanted me to look over, I'm not done editing it yet. Xie Laoshe hastily changed the subject, feeling that soon she wouldn't be able to hold back her tears anymore. But I read through the first parts very carefully. Why don't you start the academic withdrawal process a little later? Wait until I've edited the entire thing. No. He shook his head with a smile. I must go when morning comes. She felt so remorseful. Why had she always thought that there was still time? Why hadn't she stayed up all night to edit his essay? And why had she gone out to shop and chat and attend those long and meaningless meetings? Her student's dreams were about to shatter, and his heart about to give out. As his teacher, she couldn't even offer up a bouquet of flowers to bid his dream farewell. I'm sorry. It's fine, he said. But I wrote one last poem. Can I give it to you? She readily nodded. He took a piece of paper out of his backpack and handed it to her. The paper was thin, almost weightless. She read every word. It was an adoring love poem, searingly passionate, yet tentative and careful. She'd read the works of many masters who spoke of romance, from the "When will the moonlight in our bed dry the tears on our faces" of the past, to the "My eyes are more beautiful because they have you in them" of the present. And there are 2 footnotes there. "When the moonlight in our bed dry the tears on our faces" is from the poem Moonlit Night by Du Fu, a Tang Dynasty poet. And the second one is from the poem Your Eyes Are So Beautiful by Yu Kwang-chung, who lived from 1928 to 2017. Yet at this moment, it seemed like none of them could compare to the sheet of paper that her student had presented to her. He didn't put anything out in the open, as if doing so would spoil the meter of the poem. This young man was a poet. He knew that if the love between 2 people from different social statuses lost its poetry, all that would be left was embarrassment. I really like the way that was phrased. It's a memento for you. Tenderness was written all over his face, both on the grotesque and ordinary halves. I'm sorry, Laoshe. I can't afford to buy you any gifts. There's nothing better than this. She turned around, suppressing her sobs. You should eat something. I'll find you some snacks to go with the tea. In a bid to keep her emotions in check, Xie Laoshe rummaged through her cabinets. She picked up a tin of butter cookies and placed it on the table. He thanked her politely. Under Xie Laoshe's gaze, he finally touched the teacup tentatively, only to pull back instantly. Softly, he said, It's so hot. Xiaolaosha touched the cup. Huh? It's lukewarm. Nonetheless, she added some cold water to the cup. Her student chewed on his favorite cookies and slowly began to drink. By the time he finished the cookies and the tea, the night was still young. Laosha, can I stay here for a little while longer to read? He asked. Of course. He smiled again, slightly sheepish. I'm inconveniencing you so much, even when I'm about to leave. It's fine. You can stay for as long as you'd like. Right. Give me your address. I'll send you a copy of all the good books I see. Given how clever you are, even if you only study on your own, you won't do too poorly. Xiaolaosha could only offer some words of comfort. If you need any help with anything, you can contact me on WeChat. If anyone didn't know, there is a footnote for WeChat, and it just says Chinese messaging app. He looked at her. Thank you. He paused. If only everyone were like you, then perhaps... He lowered his head and didn't continue. Her dorm had no shortage of books. With his undisguised disease, his grotesque appearance made him the center of attention every time he went to the library. Thus, she invited him to the faculty dorm and lent him her own books to read. In that same spirit, he spent the whole night reading inside the faculty dorm, as if he wanted to bring all the words back to his hometown using this night. He rarely acted so selfishly. In the past, he would never stay too late, worried that he'd disrupt his teacher's routine. But today was an exception. Xiaolaosha didn't blame him for this final willful streak. She stayed up with him, but into the latter half of the night, she grew tired. Without realizing it, she drifted off to sleep at her desk. In her hazy unconsciousness, she heard her student suddenly say, Xiaolaosha. She blearily made a noise of assent. There's one more thing. I want to apologize to you. Those thefts in our class that you got criticized for. When those students kept losing their belongings and couldn't find them no matter what. Actually, I was the one who took their things. Shocked, she stirred from her slumber, but her body was too tired, too heavy to get up. But I didn't keep any of those things. I didn't take any of their money, he said sorrowfully. When they mocked me, I really hated them. I threw all their bags into a pile of straw and burned it all. They suspected me, but you chose to vouch for me without question. But in truth, I was the culprit. I didn't have the courage to admit it. Only in one person's eyes have I ever been a normal person, or even a good person. That's you. Laosha, I'm very vain, aren't I? He paused. I wouldn't know what to do if you were disappointed in me. You're the only person who has ever acknowledged me. His voice trailed off. But his gaze was clear, almost transparent, as if a weight had been taken off his shoulders. This is the one thing I regret the most. Xiaolaosha, I'm truly sorry. My disease seems to have metastasized from my face to my heart. If there is a next life, I really want to be a normal person. I don't want to be so sick that I don't even have the right to be loved. Xiaolaosha. Wind rushed in through the window, making the papers on the table flutter, like soul-summoning flags. Bunnies, I'm kind of with you with the ha. Although I have an idea, like I said, I didn't really have any spoilers or much of an idea of the story going in. But I do know, like, one thing, and I have an idea of what this is. And I'll just say that, I'll just put it this way, there's a high possibility that we can already kind of tell, I think, but I think his condition is very unscientific. I don't think he has a condition that really exists. Whatever it is, I don't think it's something real. I know that she missed Shan Xiao with the soul summoning flags, Henry. Yeah. Then silence returned. The tea on the table cooled. When Xiaolaosha woke up the next morning, She found that she'd slept the night away at her desk. Her room was neat and tidy. Her student was always polite, but this time he hadn't said goodbye to his teacher before packing up his things and leaving. Unable to suppress a twinge of melancholy, she rose sleepily and went to the living room. When she looked down at the tea table, her eyes flew open as if a basin of ice water had just been poured over her head. The tea she'd made for the youth had frozen over. But how? The room was clearly 27 or so degrees Celsius. Her dark eyes wide, she looked around the room only to be plunged into even deeper shock. Last night, she'd clearly seen her student eat the butter cookies, yet not a single one was missing from the tin. The tea, which had frozen into ice, was untouched, and finally, that veiled love poem, the contents of which she still sheltered in her heart, the paper farewell he'd gifted her, it had disappeared. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that the paper had never existed in the first place. I didn't know what to expect with the first chapter of this book, but this is not it. She was almost shaking. Suddenly, her phone alerted with a ding, causing her to jump in fright. She grabbed it immediately, only to find that it was a spam message. She let out a breath of relief, but then, as if struck by a thought, as if waking from a dream, she quickly dialed the student's number. Beep, beep, beep. Her heart pounded with every beat of the mechanical tone. Hello? The call had gone through. On the other end of the line was the familiar voice of a middle-aged woman. It sounded coarse, but right now it was also nasal with tears. Xiaolaoshe exchanged a few words with the young man's mother. Her heart sank into a pitch-black hole, careening downward. After a pause, she heard a flurry of accusations. It was you people, you again. I haven't had time to come for you, yet you actually called us first. Xiaolaoshe couldn't remember what she had said at the beginning anymore. Her mind had blanked out. All she could hear was the miserable shouting at the other end, like a bludgeoning wake-up call. He's dead. Dead. Blood froze in her veins. Dead? It's all your fault. He got into an argument with me and ran out. There was a torrential storm outside, and the police said a section of an electric cable was exposed. Xiaolaoshe's ears were ringing. Amid the intense castigation and mournful sobbing, she could barely make out a few words, ghostly and ghoulish, like an otherworldly farewell. The woman on the other end of the line gave an ear-splitting shriek. Why bother calling? Why bother? Yesterday was his 7th day. It is, there's a footnote. The student died, but we don't know the student's name. I'm absorbing kind of because I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't understand what is happening right now and the relation to the story, and I'm very intrigued. But so yesterday was the 7th day, has a footnote. It is a traditional Chinese belief that the spirits of the deceased will return home for a visit on the 7th day after their death. Wait. So he was already dead for 7 days? And she imagined him visiting? Okay. That's the end of the chapter. So he died 7 days ago. So no thoughts, head empty. You know, Meat Bun does have a way with opening chapters. And like I said, it's really weird reading like modern day Meat Bun. But like she did it again in a completely different way than I am used to her doing it. Maria, I'm gonna say there could be, well, okay, I have one theory, is there could be like a psychological aspect, because I wonder if the teacher will end up being a patient of the character who's a doctor or a psychiatrist or something like that. I don't really know. But from what I've heard, I feel like there might be some things that kind of like are not totally realistic or, you know, stretch the imagination a little. So we will just have to see. We're on chapter 2 on page 23 called I Was Still a Student Back Then. Hold on, hold on. I just saw a word and I'm like, wait a minute, everything in my brain is resetting. Everything is resetting. Hold up. Okay. Yesterday was his 7th day. The tapping of the keyboard stopped. He Yu stood up from the desk in the faculty dorm room. The apartment wasn't even 60 square meters. Next door, in the living room, a tedious variety show about poetry was playing on an old-fashioned TV. The program was accompanied by the static humming of the faulty signal. The sofa was still that sofa in the story. The story. That was a fictional part of a novel inside what we are reading. And she just did that as an opening. The snacks for the tea, the tin of biscuits, they were all still there. But the time on the clock read 8:09, and the streetlights were on outside. It was the middle of summer, and the air was very humid. Moths circled beneath the lights, mosquitoes buzzed low to the ground, and rain had yet to fall. He Yu left the little study in the faculty dorm. When he opened the door, light spilled in at an angle through the filthy window panes, making the entire space seem rather surreal, more so than the story he had just finished writing. A young woman lay on the sofa. The air conditioning was set to a very low temperature, and she was sleeping under a coral fleece blanket. Before her were several crumpled tissues that had been used to wipe away tears and snot. "Wake up," said He Yu. "Get up." Sorry, I'm laughing because I just saw something down the page a little bit. I'm about to... Okay, hold on. "Get up. Not so loud. I barely even fell asleep." The young woman groaned wearily, smacking her lips. "Gonna nap for a bit longer." He Yu was about to say something else, but the variety show on the TV started introducing an old movie. By the way, I'm feeling very old at it saying that this movie is an old movie. There's a Brokeback Mountain in every person's heart. He gave up trying to wake her up and took the remote to change the channel. He Yu really disliked homosexuality. I knew it. I knew that was I knew that was a thing in this, but Brokeback Mountain making him angry. Oh my god. Okay. Wait. Welcome, everybody, to our medical wellness program today. He changed the channel again. He Yu also disliked doctors and hospitals. Once, Zhuangzi dreamt he was a butterfly fluttering about. And there's a footnote. This is from a story about Zhuangzhou, in which he had a dream about becoming a butterfly, and then wondered whether he was a man dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was a man. I feel like somehow that will be thematically relevant. Henry, hold on, Henry. I was going to make a comment about how He Yu would call you slurs for this outfit. It's a compliment. I'm gonna... Thank you. Hold on. Okay. All right. Back to wherever we were. This time, he left the program on. Given his tastes, he could accept this as background noise. He Yu put down the remote and glanced over at the snoring woman still lying on her back. He turned and walked into the kitchen. He opened the greasy refrigerator, and the light from the appliance illuminated his face. After he surveyed the refrigerator's contents several times, he took out 2 eggs and a chunk of ham, as well as a bowl of yesterday's leftovers. Then he raised his voice to ask the woman sleeping in the living room. Xie Xue, do you have green onions here? I can't find any. The woman didn't move. I'll make you Yangzhou fried rice. There was no response from the living room. He Yu glanced back again to see that the young woman had gotten off the sofa and was leaning against the kitchen doorway. Then you'll need 2 eggs, plus a big piece of luncheon meat, the woman said, then hesitated. Do you know how? He Yu rolled up his sleeves and looked back at her with a suave smile. Sit outside and wait. It'll be ready soon. The woman named Xie Xue tottered away to wander around the other rooms. Ah, yes, this woman is named Xie Xue, and the teacher in the story was Xie Laoshi. Seeing that the computer in the study was switched on, she sat down to skim over the opened Word document. He Yu, did you use me as your muse? Well, I just commented on it. The range hood was too loud. What? He Yu asked. I said, did you use me as your muse? Xie Xue brought his laptop out. For the Xie Laoshi in this ghost story. Oh. He fell silent for a while before cracking an egg with a smile. Yep, you're exactly the person I imagined. Art imitates reality, Xie Laoshi. But you wrote that you were secretly in love with me? Art is not the same as reality, Xie Laoshi. But that last part was a lie. He really was secretly in love with her. He Yu and Xie Xue had known each other for more than 10 years. Xie Xue was 5 years older than him. This was her first year as a lecturer teaching screenwriting and directing in the School of Fine Arts at Huzhou University. He Yu was one of the students in her class. When Xie Xue first saw the roster for the incoming screenwriting and directing majors, she had sent a shocked message to He Yu. Fuck, what a coincidence. One of the boys in the 2 classes I'm teaching has the same exact name as you. At the time, He Yu had been on a plane. He was sitting in a window seat and looking out at the flickering lamplight of the airport tarmac with his cheek propped up on one hand. His phone dinged, and a familiar profile picture popped up. He looked at the message from the girl he had been in love with for 10 years and was just about to reply when the request for all passengers to switch their devices to airplane mode sounded over the intercom. You know, I've been on planes that's never stopped anybody, but okay. He Yu tilted his head and thought for a minute. He didn't reply to her message before turning off his phone. How could there be so many coincidences in this world? Idiot. He had fought for this opportunity himself, of course. It was completely unlike the story He Yu had written. As for He Yu himself, not only was he not penniless, he wasn't ugly either. He was blessed with a very handsome face, and as the son of a pharmaceutical tycoon, he had been born with a silver spoon in his mouth and attended high school overseas. But less than 30 minutes after finding out that Xie Xue had become a lecturer at Huzhou University upon graduating, He Yu applied for the institution's School of Fine Arts. Several months later, the semester began. However, the newly appointed Xie Laoshi was too young. She didn't understand how treacherous workplaces could get. Jiang Li Ping, the morality advisor, And let me just go ahead and read this footnote. For morality advisor. University role overseeing the ideological and political education of students according to the National Party line. Jiang Liping, the morality advisor in charge of the screenwriting directing classes 1, 2, and 3, was an infamous eccentric. Supposedly, she had no relevant education or training and had gotten this fluff position in the school simply by sleeping with the board of directors. Jiang Laoshe was ostentatiously beautiful and didn't feel a bit of shame about using sex to get what she wanted. Good for her. Honestly, I love her already. She spent every day blatantly flirting with the board members in broad daylight and was overtly hostile toward any female student or teacher with decent looks. I don't like her as much as I did before. When Xie Xue rushed into the classroom for her first lecture with her laptop in her arms, she saw Jiang Liping there in floor-length red dress, hogging her lectern to discuss important items with the new students. I'm sorry, Jiang Laoshe. The first class is starting. Xie Xue tried to remind her. But the other woman merely waved her hand. Just wait a minute. The morning study period was too short. I still have 2 items to go over. Who knew if she was picking on her on purpose? But Jiang Liping stretched out the last 2 points for 15, almost 16 minutes before she finally finished. All right, that's all I had to cover. I won't disrupt your class anymore. She then turned to Xie Xue. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name earlier. Anyway, stay focused, don't be nervous. Professor Jiang strutted away, her towering scarlet heels clicking against the ground. Her vintage Hong Kong-style dress fluttered in proud crimson waves in her wake, leaving the dejected Xie Xue to shuffle up to the lectern, laptop still in her arms. She was so fucking screwed. Maybe things would have been alright if Jiang Liping hadn't said anything. But now that she had, Xie Xue had to gulp nervously. Most students in prestigious schools were exceptionally talented and not easily won over. They didn't trust younger teachers as much as they did older ones in the first place. Now, Jiang Liping's parting words were nothing short of a vicious kick to Xie Xue's knees. Ouch. This group of prodigies immediately understood that, their instructor was still a teacher in training. One whose name their advisor didn't even know. What an outrage. No matter how much fiery motivation burned in Xie Xue's heart, it couldn't fend off the disparaging comments that this class was spitting at her. It only took 10 minutes for the new faculty member Xie Laoshe to devolve from a confident woman to a stuttering mess. She began to feel dizzy and faint. So caught up was she in her emotions that she didn't even notice the tall young man who was leaning back in his seat in the last row of the classroom, watching her while spinning his pen idly. Hello, everyone. I'm your screenwriting and directing teacher. My name is Xie Xue. The students weren't buying it. Laoshe, how old are you? Jie, why don't you order milk tea with us, too? Ooh, Laoshe, you look even younger than me. The situation was spinning out of control. Xie Xue had no choice but to feign sternness like a paper tiger. Silence. I'm not messing around with you. Don't waste your precious youth during your university years. You must study hard and gain knowledge. I'll have you know, I'm a very strict and uncompromising person, and the percentage of students I fail is far higher than my colleagues. So all of you need to be on your toes. Don't you dare brush off my words. He Yu couldn't contain his mirth. He looked down as the corner of his mouth curved carelessly upward. She was just a fucking dumbass. The students in the classroom fell silent, staring at her as if she were an animal in a zoo. One student even sighed and picked up his backpack to leave. Hey, you there, you... Laoshe, I won't fail no matter how much you threaten me. I have a date with my girlfriend, so I'll be leaving now. Fascinating. So Huzhou University actually hires teachers in training who threaten to fail us if we don't attend class. We got into this university after enormous effort. We're not here to become lab rats for the teachers to experiment with, are we? How come you're the one teaching us while Professor Shen teaches next door? I'm going to write a letter of complaint to the dean later. Excuse me for not staying. Xie Xue was in a terrible predicament. Although she forced herself to calmly ask for the students' names and took points off on her tablet, this sequence of events had dealt her such a heavy blow that she wasn't able to recover for a long while. Her carefully prepared lesson had become a half-forgotten mess. She blathered pointlessly for an age, before finally reaching what she had previously thought would be a very interesting interactive activity. However, not a single person was willing to come on stage and participate. Just as she was on the verge of tears, thinking of running away in defeat, a male voice suddenly came from the last row of the classroom. Lausha, I'll do it. Xie Xue was so miserable that she didn't even realize how familiar that pleasant voice was. She immediately sought out the source of the sound, looking for her savior through eyes filled with grateful tears. When she saw the boy she hadn't seen in 3 years, Xie Xue was so surprised that she gaped at him without regard for her image. You? The boy sat at his desk. His eyes were bright and clear. The corners of his mouth were upturned, and his lips were strikingly thin. He looked a little haughty, a little mischievous, much like the moment when a young Lao Qin-ming in Infernal Affairs 2 raised his head and gazed toward a drunk Mary, with some of the smugness of a young man who had discovered his prey and sated his desire. He arched a brow. Long time no see, Xie Laoshe. Long story short, that's what happened. After returning to the dorm, Xie Xue couldn't hold back anymore and began to sob in an almost cathartic manner. He Yu had a crush on her, but he wasn't particularly tactful and didn't know how to comfort her properly. He actually said, "Go ahead and cry it out then. I'll go write in your study for a while. Once you feel better, I'll come out and have dinner with you. He Yu, do you know how to cheer people up at all? Do I have to finish the homework you assigned or not? Just go." But when He Yu came out after finishing the story, Xie Xue had already cried herself to sleep. She didn't wake when he called for her, but he wasn't in a rush. Xie Xue's favorite activity was eating, with sleeping a close second. As long as you made her something yummy, she'd definitely crawl out of bed right away. Even as a university instructor, this trait wouldn't change. 15 minutes later, she was staring down at the food He Yu held before her. What's this? Looking down at the pathetically mushy, fried lumps of rice with egg and ham in his hands, He Yu felt a little embarrassed. He told his teacher extremely loftily, "Can't you tell? It's Yangzhou fried rice." "You call this Yangzhou fried rice?" "Fine, don't eat it then. I can order delivery." The student picked up his phone with a deadpan expression and looked up the highest-rated restaurant. He was filling in the delivery address when the doorbell rang. He Yu raised his almond eyes. "Who is it? A colleague here to see you?" "Probably not. I haven't gotten to know them yet." Xie Xue put down her chopsticks and looked up at the clock. Who would come at this hour? As she spoke, she shuffled over to the doorway in her slippers. A few seconds later, Xie Xue's excited voice came from the doorway. "Ge, why are you here? You're not working overtime today?" The sound of the word "ge" crashed down like thunder. He Yu's original scoundrel aura and his careless, lazy mood were instantly shattered. Countless dark memories flashed through his mind like a knee-jerk reaction. Springing to his feet, he grabbed that appallingly disgraceful fried rice from the table and strode quickly toward the trash can in the kitchen. But it was too late. Xie Xue had pulled her big brother into the room. Guh, I haven't even told you yet. He Yu's back from overseas, and he's one of my students. He's sitting inside right now. You two haven't seen each other in a long time either, right? Hey, He Yu. Xieshua's call stopped him mid-stride. Where are you going with that plate? He Yu froze, stock still, in silence. Never mind. Since he'd come back, he'd inevitably have to face him again. He Yu stood with his back to them, wiping his genuine emotions from his face before slowly turning around, looking gentle and refined, elegant and poised. Facing the elder brother of the Xie family, who was a full 13 years older than him, he actually seemed to match the man in his presence. He gazed toward the head of the Xie family, at the man who somewhat resembled Xie Shui. Then he reached up to pinch his own nape, his eyes lingering momentarily on the man's features. Long time no see, Dr. Xie. You look... Okay. So he's the doctor. So the... He Yu paused, assessing him. This man hadn't changed a bit. His features were indifferent and grim, while the planes of his face were sharp and hard, outlining a strong, combative face. His eyes were pretty, a pair of peach blossoms similar to Xie Shui's. Though they would appear alluring on anyone else, his eyes were a testament to what it meant to have your features align with your personality. On this extraordinary man, they could freeze even thousands of leagues of peach blossom pools into dark ice. Despite the similarities to Xie Shui's lovely eyes, his pupils were ice cold. With his rigidly poised physique, he exuded an aura of absolute detachment. Very tyrannical, very dictatorial. He resembled the big boss of an autocratic feudal clan. All he needed was an atmospheric black fur coat to contrast against his pale face, and two of those silver cloak clasp chains worn by military warlords to complete the look. That's incredibly specific. Like, he's already imagining this man in, like, outfits. In the end, He Yu smiled warmly, but there was no mirth in his eyes. You look the same as before. You haven't aged a bit. That's the end of the chapter. It's time for me to take a break. Before the stream, when I was having issues, I also realized that I hadn't changed the thing for breaks from the one for QJJ. So I changed it really quickly to just the thing that says, like, be right back. But for some reason, it wouldn't accept the still image that I have. So I had to take the video that I have, and I had an issue with some other music and, like, copyright before. So I took a video that just says be right back and it has music, and I took all the music out, and then I downloaded that, and then I put it in because YouTube is weird and my computer was being weird. So this still image is actually a video. Anyway, I'll make something custom for this series when we get in a little farther and I have some quotes. But I'm going to take a little break, and when we get back, we will be on page 33 for chapter 3, which is called I Disliked Him from the Start. Excellent chapter title. I didn't try to look at the chapter titles, but when I was just, like, looking at them really quickly to try to figure out how much I would read today, I was like, wow, these are bangers. And you know, Henry, YouTube is the fault of the copyright thing. OBS is the fault of not accepting my image for some reason. All right, I will be right back. Hi, hello, I am back. Henry, I saw that you're making cinnamon rolls. That sounds amazing. Um, I just have to say, this has been, like, so immediately gripping. I can't believe Meat Bud immediately got us with, like, a story within the story. Especially because it's called Opening Shot, so you kind of think, like, we're establishing the real story right here. Um, but that last chapter was also just, I don't know, I'm just like, I need to know what happens, like, now, like, stat. Um, it's yeah, I don't know, it's Henry. You said she pulled the most annoying oldest trick in the book, and I somehow feel like I don't care. Like, it worked on me, like, it worked for me, like, I'm not mad about it. I'm just like, yeah, I liked that actually. Um, so we are on chapter 3, page 33. I disliked him from the start. This was Xie Xue's older brother, Xie Qingcheng. Xie Qingcheng had once treated He Yu's illness as his family's personal physician. He Yu looked like a normal person on the outside. The impression he gave others was always gentle and kind-hearted, and he excelled in conduct, learning, and career. However, the He family had a closely kept secret. This enviable golden child had suffered from a rare mental disorder since birth. It was an orphan disease, with only 4 recorded cases having occurred throughout history. The circumstances of each patient were similar. They had congenital deficiencies in the endocrine and nervous systems. When disrupted, their personality would drastically change. Usually, they were numb to pain, but when their condition flared up, they would lose touch with reality, become bloodthirsty, and gain intense destructive tendencies toward themselves or others, resulting in a standard antisocial personality. Physical symptoms included a high fever and confusion, with each flare-up being more severe than the last. Now, Love Bunnies, hold on, because you're about to hear what this is called, and I promise it is not real bio stuff. This is one of the things that I knew going in. I heard what this condition was called, and I was like, okay. Drum roll. In clinical practice, this disorder was nicknamed psychological Ebola. It gradually caused the patient's mind to collapse, consequently paralyzing and numbing their body. In the end, they would suffer the deaths of first their mind, then their body. Like a metastasizing cancer, the symptoms would worsen step by step, breaking down a fully functioning member of society into one who would have difficulties with the most basic of social tasks, until eventually becoming a complete lunatic. In this manner, patients 1 through 3 had all been tormented to death before succumbing to that final stage. He Yu was patient 4. And yeah, she is just making stuff up, Maria. Yeah, she is just making stuff up. That's the thing, is I heard the name of the condition, and I think up until that point I was thinking, oh, this is a modern story, it's gonna be like realism, but we're not quite. We're like in a version of the real world, but it is not quite the real world. His parents brought him to many famous doctors, both local and international, but it was no use. The doctors all believed that the only way to delay the progress of the disorder was to hire a medical caretaker to stay by He Yu's side and carry out long-term supervisory care in order to lower the frequency of flare-ups. Ultimately, with various considerations in mind, the He family found Xie Qingcheng, who was only 21 at that time. That year, He Yu was 8 years old. But now, He Yu was already 19, and Xie Qingcheng was 32. Xie Qingcheng looked even more unflappable than before. One could even call him indifferent and cold. He was not easily affected by anything, so He Yu's sudden return had not shaken him. He only spent a few seconds looking over that young man he hadn't seen in more than 3 years from head to toe, ignoring He Yu's polite greetings. I mean, Meat Bun really stressing the age difference here. Yep. With his age and social standing, he had neither the interest nor the need to play along with a boy who wasn't even 20 years old. He only asked, "Why are you here?" It's already so late. This is the female faculty dorm." He Yu smiled, though he wanted to curse. "Why the fuck are you here, then?" He nevertheless responded politely. "I hadn't seen Xie Laoshe in a very long time. We were talking for so long I forgot the time. Sincerest apologies, Dr. Xie." "You don't need to call me Dr. Xie anymore." "I'm no longer a doctor." He's no longer a doctor. Okay. I know, the bunnies, why is he so close to my age? And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh god, and I'm 32. Yeah, I'm very surprised that he's not a doctor anymore. I did not know. "My bad. Old habits," He Yu responded lightly. Seeing the atmosphere between them grow tense from the sidelines, Xie Shui rushed to mediate. Daga, don't look so stern and serious." "He Yu, sit down. Don't be nervous. We haven't seen each other in so long." As she spoke, she distanced herself from He Yu, acting quite courteously. She was always like this. When she was alone with He Yu, she was very casual and behaved as though they were quite close. However, as soon as anyone else was present, especially when it was Xie Qingcheng, she would maintain a polite boundary between herself and He Yu. He Yu figured that Xie Qingcheng had used fear from a very young age to inspire this behavior. This older brother, who acted so much like a family head from a feudal society, was the epitome of straight man cancer and egregious chauvinism. And straight man cancer has a footnote. Derogatory slang term for sexist, paternalistic men, similar to the concept of toxic masculinity. Straight man cancer is hilarious. I want to use that now. Such a man would be ever vigilant about threats to the safety of their female dependents. When Xie Shui was young, Xie Qingcheng didn't even let her wear dresses with hems above the knee. One time, her school organized a talent show for families and classmates, in which Xie Shui had breakdanced. As Xie Qingcheng watched from beneath the stage, his expression had gone black. When the young Xie Shui stepped off the stage, he interrogated her about why she would participate in such an improper dance performance, with a grim look on his face, then forcefully draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. Meanwhile, I'm just like, she breakdanced? That's cool. Though it was only 8 or 9 at night, Xie Qingcheng probably thought it was extremely improper for a single man and an unmarried woman, like He Yu and his sister, to be alone together at such a late hour. Just as expected, as soon as Xie Qingcheng walked into the room, he pulled up a chair and sat down. The head of the household crossed his long legs. We have to drink to long legs. Crossed his long legs, loosened his cufflinks, and looked impassively at He Yu. "Tell me, how exactly did you just happen to get accepted to Xie Shui's university, and into her exact field of study at that?" His forceful attitude from his occupation had seeped into his personal life. At that moment, He Yu felt like he was a patient at the hospital stuck with a moody doctor who asked, "Tell me where it hurts," in a flat, indifferent tone. When He Yu thought of it like this, he found it sort of funny. Xie Ching-chung saw that He Yu didn't respond for a while, and the corners of his mouth seemed to carry a slight smile. Xie Ching-chung's gaze iced over. You can't explain? He Yu was wrong. He wasn't a doctor examining a patient. Xie Ching-chung's tone sounded exactly like a policeman interrogating a criminal. He Yu sighed and replied, It's not like that. Then enlighten me. I couldn't get used to being abroad, and I like screenwriting and directing. You're asking me why it's such a coincidence, but how can I explain it? He Yu smiled as he spoke, patience dripping from every word. It's not like I'm a fortune teller. You like screenwriting and directing? Yes. Xie Ching-chung didn't press further, because his eyes were drawn to the fried lumps of rice with egg and ham that He Yu was holding. Xie Ching-chung furrowed his brow. What is that? He Yu wanted to throw the plate at Xie Ching-chung's face, a face that looked as if others owed him a fortune, then follow up with, What's it to you? But because Xie Xue was present, he smiled at her brother politely and replied, Yangzhou fried rice. Henry, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. I couldn't get used to being abroad either. Oh my god. Xie Ching-chung looked at it closely for a few more seconds. With a cold expression on his fatherly face, he said, Take off the apron. I'll make another one. He Yu stared at him, dumbfounded. How did you survive abroad for all these years? By ordering delivery. Xie Ching-chung's gaze sharpened, a hint of condemnation flashing in his eyes. Under his penetrating glare, He Yu was transported back to the first time they met. On the villa's freshly mowed lawn, Xie Ching-chung had looked down at the 8-year-old He Yu with a gaze so sharp it could practically dissect his heart. That day was He Yu's birthday. A crowd of children were playing at the He family's enormous villa. They had tired themselves out and were chatting on the white pebbles of the lakeshore about their ambitions. When I grow up, I want to be a celebrity. I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to be an astronaut. There was a chubby kid who didn't know what he wanted to be, but he didn't want to show it either. As he looked around, he happened to catch sight of the housekeeper ushering a young doctor through the front yard. The grass was lush and vibrant, and the sky was a clear and pristine blue. The young doctor was carrying a bouquet of flowers for his boss. The splendidly blooming summer hydrangeas were wrapped in pale silver tissue paper, arranged with silvery willow catkins and bright double roses. As a unique touch, the bouquet was covered in a layer of decorative tulle, the French word for the flowy stuff. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Xie Ching-chung held the flowers in one hand and casually stuck his other hand in his pocket. He was wearing a clean, close-fitting white lab coat with 2 ballpoint pens clipped to his breast pocket. Since he wasn't working at the moment, the front of the coat was unbuttoned, revealing a lead-gray shirt beneath, as well as a pair of long, shapely legs clad in loosely tailored pants. I guess we have to take a drink at that. The chubby kid gaped at him. After a while, he pointed at Xie Ching-chung with his short, stubby, sausage-like fingers and declared, I'm gonna be a doctor. There was a sudden gust of wind, and since the florist really hadn't paid enough fucking attention when they wrapped the flowers, the wind managed to blow away the tulle covering Xie Ching-chung's bouquet. The white fabric immediately floated into the sky over the lawn, only to fall when the wind died back down again. All the children craned their necks to look at that piece of white tulle. It finally fell precisely in front of He Yu, the only one who wasn't interested at all. Although He Yu didn't like the doctors, pharmaceutical representatives, and researchers who often appeared in his home, he was habitually courteous. Therefore, he lowered his head, picked up that square of soft tulle and brought it over. Doctor, you dropped this. He looked up at those indifferent eyes. And here we have art. Yep. It was the height of summer, but inexplicably, they still made He Yu, who was learning Tang Dynasty poetry at the time, think of a particular phrase. Snowfall whispers onto the neighboring bamboo grove. This is, there's a footnote. This is from the poem New Year's Eve in Guilin by Rong Yu. This 8-year-old child reading poetry, I can't, it's just, okay, I'm just, okay. Xie Qingcheng looked down and took the tool. The movement made his lab coat flutter lightly in the breeze, like the cast-off feathers of a crane that had transformed into a demonic spirit. Thank you. At that moment, He Yu suddenly caught a whiff of a faint medicinal smell coming from his cuffs. Research had shown that the feelings between people were largely dictated by the scents on each other's bodies. That was to say, if someone gave off a scent that you liked, then it would be easier for you to fall in love at first sight. On the other hand, if their smell made you annoyed or afraid, then you probably wouldn't have a very promising future together. He Yu didn't like Xie Qingcheng's scent. This time it is a dislike, although we will see if that changes. Oh, sorry, I'm knocking the mic. This is definitely giving a little bit of some Arha vibes, but kind of like flipped around a little bit, which is interesting. With the like disliking his scent and like the indifferent, yeah, I don't know, just it's interesting. He Yu didn't like Xie Qingcheng's scent. It was ice cold and unyielding, like the countless bitter pills he'd swallowed ever since he was a child, like the alcohol and iodine solution they would wipe on his arm before injections, like pale, white, ice-cold hospital rooms, devoid of human company and suffused with the odor of disinfectant. He was almost instinctively terrified of this kind of smell. Subconsciously, he frowned. But the housekeeper grabbed his shoulder and smiled as he introduced him to that Dr. Big Brother who made him feel unwell all over. Dr. Xie, this is our boss's young master. Just when he was about to look away, Xie Qingcheng paused and fixed his dark eyes on He Yu. So, it's you. The look in his eyes irrationally reminded He Yu of a surgical knife. It was abnormally incisive, giving He Yu the strange feeling that he was going to cut open his heart and put it under a microscope. Nice to meet you, the young doctor said. I'll probably be the one treating your illness in the future. He Yu was afraid of doctors. He deeply disliked even gentle female doctors, to say nothing of this terrifying apparition emanating stern iciness from head to toe. Also, I'm just catching some of what y'all are saying, and I definitely think Meat Bun needs to write like actual Omegaverse. I desperately need that. Where? The 8-year-old boy immediately felt unwell. He forced a smile, then turned around and left. His mother, Liu Jishu, happened to see the scene from the balcony. When she finished work that night, she called her son into the study. There was a cup of hot cocoa at just the right temperature on the tea table, covered in emerald green velvet. She pushed the cocoa over to He Yu. That Dr. Xie, you met him today? I did. He Yu's family upbringing was strict. He was always very prim and proper to his mother, and a distance was maintained between them. Liu Jishu was considerably disappointed in this abnormal son. At that point in time, she had already birthed a second child. Although the younger boy wasn't as clever as the elder, he was at the very least cute, sweet, and healthy. So she focused all her attention on him. When she talked to He Yu, she had nearly no patience. His name is Xie Qingcheng. He'll be your personal physician from now on, and he'll come to our house every week to examine you. You must cooperate with him, and if you ever feel unwell, you can call him over at any time. The composure of the 8-year-old boy in front of her always made Liu Jishu feel a little scared, a feeling she tried to dispel with a sigh and a bit of teasing. He Yu. What? Sorry. With a bit of I started to read that. I started to look at the next sentence, and I completely forgot that it just said she tried to dispel with a sigh and a bit of teasing. He Yu, we've signed a slave contract with Dr. Xie. If he can't cure your condition, he'll end up as a long-term laborer for us. He'll never get paid or be able to take any days off. He won't even be able to find a wife and get married. Do you know what this means? Not really. It means, if you don't cooperate, you'll lower the efficacy of his treatment, keep him from regaining his freedom, and leave him unable to eventually find a wife. Then you'll have to take responsibility for him and support him for life. I don't think we should be teasing children in this way. Oh, who has to go? Love bunnies. Oh, bye, love bunnies. Even though he was mature for his age, He Yu was still only 8, young and gullible, and was thus horrified. He looked up at once. Can I cancel his contract? No. On her flights the past few days, Liu Jishu had obsessively watched Republican-era dramas about torturous love and family infighting. With a fleeting thought, she added something even more cutting. Sorry, okay. My brain just is broken right now. Okay. Yeah, when I just said this is not a way to tease a child, I extremely, am having that sentiment now. Also, he might want you to take responsibility by becoming his wife. Look at how pretty you are. You'd make a decent foster bride. Foster bride has a footnote. A girl adopted into a family with the intention of having one of their sons marry her in the future. Back then, He Yu had no interest whatsoever in love, nor did he have any desire to learn more, so he didn't even know marriage was restricted to heterosexual couples in this region. At Liu Jishu's words, his psychological trauma deepened. There was even a period when Xie Qingcheng's silhouette would appear in his nightmares. Hold on. Why do we think that this man is homophobic? I feel like he has trauma about this, and it just transferred into that, and there's actually a legitimate reason. But I know, I get it, Henry, I get it. Okay, it's only because he's fictional, but that's kind of funny. Okay. There was even a period when Xie Qingcheng's silhouette would appear in his nightmares. No, I don't like you. I don't want to marry you. These nightmares weren't dispelled until 6 months later, when He Jiwei heard the story and roundly cursed out his own wife. What the hell did you tell our son? Then he cursed out He Yu. How'd you fall for this kind of joke? Where has your usual intelligence gone? You're a man. Xie Qingcheng is also a man. What do you mean you need to marry him and be responsible for him? Do you have rocks for brains? Okay, I hate the parents. He Yu felt very dispirited. Over the course of the past half a year, at the thought of how he'd end up as that ice-cold doctor's foster bride if he didn't cooperate and let Dr. Xie cure him of his psychological condition. All he could do was constantly pretend to be stupid and foolish in front of the doctor. He hoped to leave a very negative impression on this man, so that even if matters got to that point in the future, Dr. Xie would definitely never develop any untoward interest in himself. However, he didn't expect that after playing the fool in front of Xie Qingcheng for 6 months straight, his dad would tell him, "Your mom was teasing you." If not for He Yu's strong self-restraint, he might have already blurted out a "fuck you." Unfortunately, he was monitored too closely. Forget about curse words. At age 8, even the word bastard had yet to enter his childhood vocabulary. But, in any case, through those 6 months of diligent effort, persevering hard to embarrass himself before Xie Qingcheng, He Yu had more or less managed an extraordinary feat. No matter how hard he strove, in the following 6 or 7 years... No, it was longer than that. Even after he parted ways with Xie Qingcheng at age 14, even today, to Xie Qingcheng, He Yu was still a massive, three-dimensional, living and breathing dumb fuck with a capital D. And in this moment, the hideous bowl of fried rice in his hands was the strongest evidence of the fact that, in Xie Qingcheng's eyes, after 4 whole years, he was still the ultimate dumbfuck who couldn't even make fried rice properly. He put down the offending dish and handed the apron to the head of the Xie family, the elder brother who was dressed immaculately in a pressed suit and leather shoes. He Yu appeared calm and collected, but he was a little dejected. That was a miscalculation, he thought to himself. He shouldn't have personally done the cooking to begin with. Wasn't this just giving Xie Qingcheng free entertainment? That is the end of the chapter. Oh, yay, the cinnamon rolls are ready. Blessed by homophobia. Well, we're on page 45 for chapter 4, which is called, "When We Met Again, I Needed to Look Down at Him." These are very interesting chapter titles. I really like this one. The sizzling sound of frying rice filled the narrow kitchen. He Yu and Xie Xue sat at the somewhat greasy little dining table. Xie Xue was in a better mood, a relaxed smile on her face as she waited for her elder brother to finish cooking. He Yu also smiled perfunctorily, but on the inside, he was rolling his eyes. Perfunctorily. Perfunctorily? Why, I suddenly don't know how to say that word either. The kitchen door covered in posters slid open. The familiar aroma of cooked rice wafted out first. Then Xie Qingcheng walked out and took off his apron. As usual, he was wearing a shirt tucked into tailored dress pants. Despite his cold personality, he was still a good elder brother. Because his parents had died young, he had become the head of the household by default, looking after his younger siblings since childhood. As a result, his culinary skills were quite excellent. Seeing her brother with his rolled-up sleeves bring a tray over and put it down on the simple little table, Xie Xue cried out in surprise and quickly jumped up to help him arrange the food and set the table. "It smells amazing. Guh, you're the best. You're the best. I love you so, so, so much. Let's eat. I'm starving." Xie Qingcheng's expression was solemn. "Girls shouldn't blather on like this. It's inappropriate. Go and wash your hands first." Then he turned to He Yu and said, "You too." It had been ages since He Yu had eaten this kind of fried rice. The rice Xie Qingcheng made was fluffy and golden, each and every grain distinct. When He Yu was little, he would stand by the stove and watch Xie Qingcheng make his little sister's favorite dish. He knew good fried rice needed to be made from leftover rice that was neither too moist nor too dry. Before the rice went into the pan, Xie Ching-chung would first mix it with beaten eggs in a large bowl until every grain of rice was evenly coated in golden yellow. Once the oil in the pan was hot, he would swiftly add in 2 more fresh eggs, scramble them, and immediately scoop them up. Then he would add lard and pour the egg-coated rice into the frying pan and stir-fry on high heat. But this wasn't exactly authentic Yangzhou fried rice. To suit Xie Shui's tastes, Xie Ching-chung modified the recipe and never added peas, but this didn't make it any less delicious. All 3 plates of golden, piping hot fried rice glistened under the lights with small pieces of diced ham, tender shrimp, and delicate green spring onions sprinkled throughout. They looked and smelled extremely appetizing. As He Yu ate, he schemed in secret. And yeah, meat bun and food. Indeed. He hardly tasted the food as it passed through his mouth. Xie Shui talked and laughed at the table, but because Xie Ching-chung was present, she directed most of her cheerful chatter toward her brother. The 2 siblings conversed comfortably, but because He Yu hadn't interacted with the 2 of them in so long, he struggled to get a word in edgewise, becoming a non-existent backdrop. Said backdrop wasn't happy at all. He needed to find an excuse to send Xie Ching-chung away. Do you want some more? Oh, wait. There is art. Just look at him angrily looking at his spoon of rice. While lost in thought, he'd already silently finished the fragrant fried rice. He Yu snapped out of it and politely responded to Xie Ching-chung, who was looking at him. I'm good. Guh, I want more. Give me some more. Xie Ching-chung left with Xie Shui's plate. Xie Shui bit down on her chopsticks and said to He Yu, My brother's fried rice is way better than yours. It's so delicious. Why don't you have another bowl? He Yu faked a smile. One person who can break the scales is enough. I won't cause further trouble. Hey, what's your problem? You don't like me, huh? You're the one who complained that mine wasn't as good as his. As the two of them squabbled, Xie Ching-chung's voice sounded from the kitchen. Xie Shui, what's this bucket of water doing here? Oh. Xie Shui immediately stopped quarreling with He Yu. As if she hadn't just been giggling with him, she sat up straight and said solemnly, The school said the water is going to be shut off tomorrow. I filled a bucket with water just in case, but the kitchen is too small and it gets in the way if I put it anywhere else, so I can only put it on top of the chest. If you put it up so high, what if it falls when you open the kitchen door without paying attention? Guh, you don't need to pay it any mind, the dumbass replied. It'll be fine. Xie Shui spoke offhandedly, but He Yu was listening intently. He was someone who liked to pull a girl's pigtails if he had a crush on her. As he listened to their conversation, his pretty, pure almond eyes glanced toward the kitchen as a terrible idea suddenly occurred to him. Okay. Yeah, because he has a crush on her, but I noticed earlier he kept referring to her as like a dumbass and stupid and all of those things. It took me a second to figure out who the dumbass was there, because we just got the download that He Yu like purposely acted, like purposely acted stupid for the doctor when he was younger. The doctor still thinks he's an idiot, so I wasn't sure who was talking for a second. But yeah, Henry, exactly. That sounds very in love with her of you, He Yu. I do believe that He Yu like really does like her and have a crush on her in his messed up way. God, I'm so curious to see where this goes down the line. I'm not curious about what is going to happen with the water bucket because I don't like it. The three of them finished eating dinner. Xie Ching-chung didn't like to clean up, so He Yu, with his image of being a gentle, reliable, and exceptional boy, naturally took on the task of washing the dishes and pans. Do you need help? Xie Shui asked. I'll let you know in a bit if I do, He Yu said with an insincere smile. He turned to walk into the kitchen and closed the door. The moment the door shut, his smile disappeared. He Yu carefully examined the angles in the room. He first moved the bucket of water a bit farther outward on the chest of drawers, to a position where it would fall if the kitchen door was opened. Then he very calmly took out the hair dryer that Xie Shui kept in the second drawer. Without batting an eyelid, he put it into the sink and turned the faucet on. Okay. So, see, the whole pulling a girl's pigtails if you have a crush on her. That is not this. Xie Shui had saved up half a month's salary to buy this high-end hairdryer. With a loud splash, young Master He, whom she'd never suspect, thus drenched it into an impressive-looking but useless piece of scrap. Excellent. He Yu wiped the water off the hairdryer and placed it back into the drawer. The preparations were complete. Yeah, I'm so mad because okay, he's not doing the electric shock thing. He just wanted to break it. But I did have that thought for a second, and I was like, hold on. But I'm just the fact that it's a high-end hairdryer. I know how much those freaking like the Dyson hair dryers or whatever the fancy ones cost, and I'm just like, oh god. The preparations were complete. He glanced coolly through the ajar door at the girl chatting with Xie Ching-chung, then turned around and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. He calmly turned on the faucet again, dispensed some detergent, and began to wash the dishes. He simply looked like the epitome of a good person. A shining example of an upstanding young man. And both of those had exclamation points. However, those who had done too many bad things were likely to encounter retribution. He Yu was on the cusp of seeing his carefully devised and meticulously planned efforts come to fruition. He shook the water off his hands and was getting ready for the female lead to run into the disaster of the coincidence that he'd orchestrated when he suddenly heard footsteps outside the kitchen. Thought this would happen. He Yu immediately turned his head, only to see the shadow of a tall, straight-backed man through the frosted glass. He Yu's almond eyes widened, but before he could prevent anything, he heard Xie Ching-chung say, He Yu, I'm coming in to wash my hands. Wait. The word was halfway out of his mouth before he heard a massive noise. The bucket of water that He Yu had intentionally readjusted on the chest of drawers rocked in a circle. Then, with an almighty crash, that full bucket of water, the bucket that should have landed on Xie Shui according to He Yu's original plans, tipped over, its contents cascading right over Xie Ching-chung's handsome face. Oh, Maria, what was the Tasha and June reference? Fuck. And not a single fucking drop was wasted. Both men were at a complete loss for words. Water splashed everywhere, rendering the entire room a mess. The bucket, which had achieved its goal with smashing success, dropped to the ground and rolled around beside Xie Ching-chung, who was drenched from head to toe. In the end, it leisurely rolled out of the living room, like an old man taking a walk, and came to a perfectly satisfied stop before Xie Shui, who had hastily run over at the commotion. Xie Shui had witnessed the entire series of events from outside the kitchen. Now, she was trembling in fear. She was done for. She was fucking done for. Xie Shui watched as her completely soaked big brother slowly turned toward her. His skin was quite fair to begin with, but after being drenched so thoroughly out of the blue, his complexion seemed even paler, while his eyes and brows looked even darker. Water dripped from the wet wisps of hair plastered to his forehead, streaming past his eyebrows to his eyes, wide open in disbelief. He narrowed them subconsciously before returning to his senses. Xie Shui. Xie Shui flinched, shrinking in terror. Xie Qingcheng flipped his dripping bangs back and raged. I already told you not to put the bucket on the drawers. I'm sorry. Quivering, Xie Shui scurried into the room and grabbed a mop and paper towels. She handed the paper towels to her brother as she rummaged through the drawers for her hairdryer. Guh, I didn't expect it to fall either. It was clearly fine earlier. Dry your hair first. Don't catch a cold. You know, it just, Henry, it just occurred to me that part of the reason for him trying to dump the bucket of water on her was the wet t-shirt thing, possibly, and Behind her, He Yu guiltily blinked his warm almond eyes. Xie Shui pulled Xie Qingcheng into the living room, completely oblivious as she took out the hairdryer that He Yu had ruined with water. She plugged it in and pressed the button to switch it on. Nothing happened. She pressed the button again. Still nothing. Speechless, she could only keep on pressing the button to no avail. Guh. As Xie Shui looked at her brother's extremely dark expression, she felt like her death was practically imminent. In a shaky voice, she said, The hairdryer seems to be broken. Xie Qingcheng shot her a glance through icy peach blossom eyes. This is the 4,000 yuan hairdryer you told me about? I don't know. If someone wants to look up what 4,000 yuan is in USD for me, I don't think that's as expensive as, like, the really high-end hairdryers. I don't think 4,000 yuan is as much as they can be. So I am only slightly relieved, but I don't really remember how it compares. Xie Shui nearly fell to her knees. How could she be so unlucky? Oh no, I was wrong. Never mind, $570? Never mind, I was completely wrong. That's, okay. That's horrifying. That's really bad. I'm like, He Yu, are you gonna offer to buy her another one? Like, what is that part of your plan? Xie Qingcheng hadn't understood why she needed to buy a hairdryer that was more expensive than a regular television in the first place. He'd cursed her out roundly for it, but she kept reiterating how great this hairdryer was, how good it was for the hair. Most importantly, it was very high quality and would last at least 20 years. I swear that I'll use this hairdryer for 20 years, Xie Shui had proclaimed. Otherwise, you can chop my head off as an idiot tax. Her words from back then echoed in her ears. Under Xie Qingcheng's chilling gaze, Xie Shui felt her nape prickle with cold. She involuntarily took a few steps back and reached up to cover her neck. Just as she was at a loss for what to do, Xie Shui glimpsed He Yu wiping his hands and walking out from the kitchen, as if he had done nothing wrong. Suddenly struck by an idea, she ran hastily over to He Yu, as though she had seen a life-saving deity, and wept. He Yu, can I ask you for a favor? She cried. My hairdryer broke. Who knew I'd be so unlucky? Do you have spare clothes in your dorm? You have a hairdryer, right? Can you take my brother over there to change? Laoshe thanks you. She was acting so courteously in front of her brother again. After a moment's silence, He Yu smiled and decided to play along. Xie Laoshe, you're really being too formal. He looked towards Xie Qingcheng. Xie Qingcheng was sitting with his back against the couch, water still dripping from his chiseled jaw. His casual gray shirt had been completely soaked through. The fabric stuck to his skin and faintly exposed the outline of his chest and his slim waist. Do we drink for that one too? His thin lips were slightly pursed as he stared darkly at Xie Shui, as if he were getting ready to choose righteousness over family and obliterate this failure of a sister on behalf of the world. He Yu looked at him and felt the onset of a slight headache. According to his original plans, the person who was supposed to end up soaked and helpless was Xie Shui. I see. Yes, the plan. Yes. She should have been the one following him back to his dorm to blow dry her hair. How did it become Xie Qingcheng instead? He Yu was straight, and he also disliked doctors. His elderliness, Xie Qingcheng, was completely unwelcome in his room. But he had no other choice. There was no turning back now. He'd already gotten Xie Qingcheng into such a state, and Xie Shui had already asked him for help. He could only sigh softly and walk over to Xie Qingcheng. To the gloomy-faced doctor sitting on the sofa, He Yu said, "You're already soaked, so you should stop glaring, Dr. Xie. Why don't you come with me to get changed? My dorm's only 10 minutes away from here. Let's go." Oh my god, he's like if Chuaning was conservative. Xie Qingcheng. I can see it. Yeah. The male dorms at the School of Fine Arts in Huzhou University were 4-person rooms. It was still dinner time when He Yu and Xie Qingcheng arrived. All his roommates had gone out to eat, so no one was inside the dorm. Where are these? He Yu took out a clean shirt and a pair of pants from his closet and handed them to Xie Qingcheng. A sports t-shirt? Xie Qingcheng scoffed. What's wrong with it? What was wrong with it? Well, men only wore such clothing when they were in school. Xie Qingcheng hadn't put on something like this in decades. He couldn't even remember how he looked in shirts like this anymore, not to mention they didn't suit him at all now. Give me a dress shirt. Tsk, sorry about that, Dr. Xie. You don't get to choose. He Yu's smile was so light and perfunctory, it was like gauze. Since Xie Shui wasn't here, he could drop all pretense. His pitch-black eyes were devoid of the slightest hint of sincerity, and his tone was less than courteous when he said, I really only have one shirt that's in your size. My dress shirts are too big for you." Xie Qingcheng looked up, his gaze piercing through his wet bangs and landing on He Yu's face. The mockery lurking at the corners of He Yu's mouth seemed much more obvious now that he'd done away with his feigned politeness. He arched a brow as he met Xie Qingcheng's eyes. "Don't want to wear it? Then you'll have to walk out naked." Xie Qingcheng silently snatched the clothes out of He Yu's hand. His expression was stiff as he trudged to the washroom. While waiting for Xie Qingcheng to change, He Yu was struck by déjà vu. He said to the man behind the frosted door, "By the way, Dr. Xie, I remembered something all of a sudden. Remember that time when I went to your university dorm?" "I don't remember. Get lost." He Yu laughed. He hadn't even completed his sentence before Xie Qingcheng cut him off with his denial. How was this any different from admitting outright that he hadn't forgotten that old grudge? Clearly, both he and Xie Qingcheng recalled that incident from before. Grievances didn't stem from nothing. Even something as minor as this article of clothing was long-awaited retaliation against Xie Qingcheng. He Yu found himself feeling a little pleased at his thought. Perhaps this was how it felt to turn the tables many years later. Henry, oh no, he's the only one He Yu does not have to pretend around. No way, this will end up as a beautiful romance. Then hurry up. Without Xie Shui, He Yu could barely keep his true colors from shining through brightly in front of Xie Qingcheng. He leaned against the bathroom door with his arms crossed and smiled. He knocked on the pane of frosted glass. The roguish note in his voice was apparent as he said, "We still need to go back and see your sister after you're done." A few minutes later, Xie Qingcheng flung the door open. It slammed into He Yu, nearly knocking him over. Caught off guard, He Yu let out a muffled groan and bent over, clutching his nose. Xie Qingcheng looked at him indifferently. Why were you standing so close? He Yu was in so much pain that he let his mask slip. Xie Qingcheng, why are you so unreasonable? You're the one who slammed the door into me. When his stubbornness got the better of him, he still used Xie Qingcheng's full name in private. Xie Qingcheng hesitated. Go get some ice for it. Where am I supposed to find ice? He Yu let go of his reddened nose bridge and kneaded it. He managed to suppress his anger, but couldn't resist talking back. You look a lot like ice to me. Might as well hold your hand to my nose instead. Xie Qingcheng imagined the scene for a moment. With a chilly expression, he tersely replied, "Too gay. I'm homophobic." Like, what? Is this how homophobic people talk? I'm so they're both like this. They're both like this. Xie Qingcheng shoved He Yu away. He circled around him to enter the dorm and began searching. He Yu was at a loss for words. What? That's not what I meant. If you're homophobic, then I'm even more homophobic. Where's the hairdryer? Xie Qingcheng didn't let him continue. He also couldn't be bothered to listen to his explanation. On the chair. I do remember vaguely, like a Kichter short about in this book, them being like arguing over who's more homophobic. So I feel delighted to have finally gotten to this point. Xie Qingcheng plugged the hairdryer in and began blow-drying his hair. He Yu, who was still somewhat upset, stood on the balcony. From a distance, he stared at Xie Qingcheng. He simply couldn't understand how a person like this could be Xie Xue's biological brother. Xie Xue worshipped her elder brother and saw him as a savior of sorts, but He Yu didn't understand what it was about Xie Qingcheng that made him so worthy of her devotion. He was just an old man. But as he stared, He Yu's mind began to wander. Xie Qingcheng was the young He Yu's childhood nightmare. He Yu had always feared him, yet he still had to see him because Xie Qingcheng was his doctor. In front of him, He Yu had embarrassed himself and lost all his composure. Xie Qingcheng had witnessed all the times he had gone mad. Once, He Yu was struggling wildly against his medical restraints, screaming at him like a crazed, trapped beast. Xie Qingcheng had leveled a cool gaze at him and walked toward him under the glare of surgical lights. He Yu had caught a whiff of the icy cold scent of disinfectant on Xie Qingcheng before a needle pierced his skin. At that time, he thought that Xie Qingcheng was so tall and so cold. Xie Qingcheng was strong and irrefutable, hovering over him like a dark cloud, a boogeyman he could never escape in his lifetime. Who would have thought that, after a few years apart, He Yu was now the one who had to look down at Xie Qingcheng? He Yu, so he's, because he's tall, wait, he is taller? Yes, he's taller now. So I thought the title meant, like, when we met again, I needed to look down at him. Like, I needed to see him as lesser. But it's like, I need to look down at you because you're shorter than me. But also, it's definitely both. Oh, okay. I love it. He Yu lowered his gaze to look at Xie Qingcheng. What had happened? Xie Qingcheng didn't seem as scary anymore. Perhaps people's childhood impressions were enduring, even if they were inaccurate. For example, if one looked back at TV shows that seemed endlessly long when they were a child, they'd realize that the shows might have had but 20-something episodes. Or the sheepdog that they had once feared, that seemed bigger and sturdier than a horse, In fact, only came up to an adult's knee in old photographs. Perhaps this was the sort of psychological discrepancy He Yu felt toward Xie Qingcheng. He Yu's gaze lingered on Xie Qingcheng, long enough for him to notice. Xie Qingcheng shot He Yu a cold look. "What are you looking at?" He Yu was quiet for a moment. "Just seeing whether or not my clothes suit you." Xie Qingcheng didn't reply. "They really are too big," said He Yu. "Xie Qingcheng, I remember you used to be very tall." "I don't feel the need to show off my height and build," Xie Qingcheng said coolly. He turned around and continued to dry his hair. However, just before he faced away, his expression seemed a bit dark. In that instant, He Yu realized that his childhood boogeyman was merely an ordinary person, a slightly slender man at that. He Yu's white t-shirt hung loose on Xie Qingcheng, the dip at the collar exposing pale skin, like a gulf at the base of a snowy mountain stream, cast in shadow by the garment. Weird. Why had he been so afraid of Xie Qingcheng back then? He Yu was still caught up in his musings when Xie Qingcheng finished drying his hair. Straight men didn't bother much with their appearance. He only casually ran a hand through his locks in front of the mirror before putting down the hairdryer and turning back to He Yu. "I'll get going. I'll return your shirt tomorrow." "No need. I'm not accustomed to wearing clothes that other people have worn. Just toss it after you change. It was getting old anyway." Xie Qingcheng didn't press. He pushed aside the still damp ends of his hair once more and said, "All right, then I'll be on my way." "You're not going back with me to Xie Xue's?" "No," said Xie Qingcheng. "I have other plans tonight." "Writing papers?" Xie Qingcheng wasn't in the habit of hiding his personal affairs, or maybe he just didn't care. He glanced over at He Yu as he was putting his watch back on his wrist and said, "A matchmaking date." He Yu, who was only making small talk and not paying much attention, didn't react to these words right away. He even felt secretly happy that Xie Qingcheng finally had the good sense to leave. Several seconds later, however, his words finally registered in his brain, as if the distance from his ears to their destination was a reflex arc long enough to loop the earth. He Yu's head whipped around in shock, his almond eyes flying wide open. Wasn't Xie Qingcheng married? Why was he going on matchmaking dates? Why hadn't Xie Xuan mentioned this to him before? Countless questions surged through his head. He Yu blinked as he grasped at the central thread of this jumble of thoughts. He practically gaped at Xie Qingcheng's apathetic face, half of which was submerged in shadow. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "You got divorced?" Yes, he got divorced. That is apparently what happened, because the next chapter title, the title of chapter 5, which we will read next time, is "He Got Divorced." So, that was the beginning of Case File. That was the beginning of being on Ben. Meat Bun is doing it again in a completely different way this time, but I certainly see some common threads. This was the other random thing that I knew about Case File. I knew about psychological Ebola, and I knew that one of them was divorced. That's like the main things that I knew, weirdly, which just leads to like a super random kind of like expectation of this. Like, obviously I knew too that it's like the craziest meat bun and super, triggering and everything happens, but like I didn't really know that much about what to expect. So this was interesting to read. So Wednesday is Wednesday is Christmas Eve day. So there is no stream on Wednesday. So unfortunately, we have to wait until next Monday. And next Monday we will pick back up on chapter 5. He got divorced. And then we will again have off on that Wednesday. And then we will again meet on Monday, and after starting Monday in the new year, whenever that day falls, starting in the new year, it'll be the regular schedule again. I hope that made any sense. I really like the start of this, and it's like immediately like, we're gonna tell you what you're in for. I guess Meat Bun is pretty good at doing that, like immediately being like, these are the kind of ridiculous things. I mean, it's only gonna get worse from here on out. But like, these are the kind of ridiculous things that you're in for. By the way, here they are. Yeah. So I can tell now. I can see how, on the cover, like Yu has this bigger, imposing presence. I mean, obviously he's like choking him, or kind of, but I mean, just in his like build and the way that this was drawn, that was a great chapter title that I can't believe I didn't catch until we got way into it. Yeah, I guess choking him is the wrong word, because he's looking very chill. In fact, what I'm wondering about this is this cover like a metaphorical representation of some vibes in the book, or is this cover something that actually happens in the book? Because that would be interesting. Yeah, Yu is choking him, but he does not give a shit. Yes. He's just kind of whatever, it's fine. So thank you all for coming today. I will see you on Monday. I wanted to go ahead and start this because I could have just waited until next year and then not had to have like the breaks in between streams like this, but I really wanted to get started. So I'm so sorry that we have to wait until next Monday. But it's, yeah. So I will see you next time. Bye.